All right, so today we're going to be talking with the tanks um, about marriage, and we're going to be going over a few things with them, um, just to see maybe where the enemy got in at. And brother, pop back up. All right, so today we're going to be talking about, and this is not just for the tanks, but for everybody's marriage. One of the things. One of the main reasons why people get divorced is for what they call irreconcilable differences. And in other words, differences in their marriage that they've had that they have not been able to reconcile, which oftentimes means that they were not able to come to an agreement on a lot of some issues that were designed to break their marriage. And so, one of the things I want to say about irreconcilable differences or differences that married couples have is that God put us together to um, complement each other and to use those differences to make a stronger unit. So, my wife, she's wearing glasses now, and she is what they call farsighted, which means that she could see far away. And I'm nearsighted, which means I can see things that's close but not far away. And so in our marriage, in that instant, just speaking of something natural like that, we complement each other because what I can't see, she can naturally, so without glasses. And what I can see, she can't. And so that's the way marriage is. And sometimes that's the way the Lord will do things for us. He put us together um, to complement each other. And so in other words, where I'm strong at, my wife may be weak, and where she's strong at, I might be weak. And so we use those things to help build our marriage and to make each other stronger. But sometimes those in marriages, those things, those differences causes us to collide with each other. And to me, the art of marriage is reconciling differences. In other words, working differences out. And oftentimes, what happens is we have a difference maybe at the beginning of our marriage or beginning of our relationship, and we never reconciled it, and then we just go on and we live for years and years with those differences never being really worked out, and it really just builds on top of that, and it gets to the point where sometimes people are willing to call it quits. And so, one of the things I want to share is that all differences are reconcilable. Uh, all differences are reconcilable, uh, but they are reconcilable according to God's word. In other words, both people in both people in a marriage have to be sold out to God so that they can see things from God's perspective and from His word, even when they don't understand it. And so we're at a crossroad here where we've come to a place where we want to kind of get to the root of maybe some things that have gone on that maybe was not worked out, and because of that, it has caused friction, and of course, not just in this marriage, but in other marriages as well. And so, I want to ask this question really to you both, and I'd like for you both to answer. Um, at what Because in most relationships, when a relationship start, both people are on cloud nine. Both people really love one another, and they look forward to spending time with each other. and then over time things begin to happen, and the cloud nine uh, feeling begin to wear off. But it still should level out and get to a place where people are glad to still be around each other and spend time together. But I want to ask you all, both of you, Brother Tanks and Sister Tanks, at what point in your relationship uh, do you believe it began, and I say began, to take a turn for the worse? And when I say take a turn, I mean no matter how slight of a turn it was, at what point do you believe uh, um, your marriage began to go in a direction that was contrary to uh, having a good, healthy marriage? Can you hear me, Brother Tanks?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That's the question I'm asking.
I feel like Texas.
So you say you feel like Texas
Yes, sir.
when you all moved to Texas? Okay, so what happened? What happened in Texas to make you feel like it started going down the wrong path?
Um, that was of course the time when we were living with my brother-in-law and his wife, and like I shared the story of how um during that time, like my husband would have these conversations with them and stuff, and I felt like I just remember. So that situation happened, and then I remember us having a lot of arguments during that time.
Okay, so you said Texas. So what was going on with your brother? And you said that they were having conversations.
Yes, sir. We were all living together, and I would be going off to work and stuff, and my husband would talk to them, I guess, about me. And during the conversations, he should I mention what was said, or
Yeah, I believe you. Yeah.
um. So during that time, it was one instance where they were talking about my hygiene as a woman, and he had talked to them about it, and I didn't know anything about it. And I remember them laughing and stuff, and I was really upset about that. And then there was also things that I had talked to my husband about, and I was talking to my husband about things that I had in my heart towards my sister-in-law. He went back and told her, and then it started this issue in the house, like where I felt outside.
Okay. All right, Sister Tanks, could you raise your camera up just a little bit so we can get you all the way in? All right, thank you. All right, so you said you believe it. You felt like it started in Texas when you were all living with his brother and sister-in-law, and basically you said that you felt like an outsider living with his brother and sister-in-law, basically. All right, so well, let me ask you this: how do you think that affected you? What was your responses, if anything, to that?
I didn't trust my husband.
Okay, you didn't trust him. Let me ask you this: since you said that, do you feel like you had gotten? Do you feel like you had gotten any of your trust back? Do you feel like you began to trust him at any point after that?
I I would say I try to, but it's still some hesitation. So I don't think it's all the way back.
So ever since then, your trust haven't been where it's supposed to be ever since then.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have All right, so brother Tanks, what did it start with you? What do you feel like your marriage began to take a turn for the worse? And when I say worse, I mean where it took a turn at. And I don't. It didn't have to start off as being worse, but basically headed in that direction. I guess you could say.
I would say Texas as well. I do feel like it got a whole lot worse in Texas. Um, I agree with some of the things my wife was saying. Um, but at the same time, some of those things I was talking with my brother about um, wasn't meant to come off as, I guess, like teasing or making fun of. I just knew that my brother was older than me, and he's, I guess you could say, like, seen a lot of different things, dealt with a lot of other things too. So I was like, well, maybe he can help me with this question or something like that. But I can see how that, like, Texas did, living with them did make us take a turn for the worse, because it was like at one point they started kind of playing us against each other.
Okay. Um. All right. So brother Tanks, so where did it start for you then? Like, what was the start of it?
Like the start of the issues.
Yeah. Like, what do you think y'all begin to have marital problems at, or relationship problems?
I think we started having them in Louisiana, like maybe like a couple of months before we moved. I think we started having them.
All right. And what were the issues?
Um, I would say, I guess like the first issue would be the lack of intimacy. Um, and I can't really think of the right word, but I guess you say like being feeling like I was being looked down on by her for not working. Um, just just different things that she had said to me.
You want to share things that she said?
One of the things was I I can't exactly remember exactly how it was said, but I know she had said that um, I guess like she's getting tired of taking care of a bum, or just in general called me a bum. That was one of the things that was said.
Okay. So, do you, Brother Tank, do you feel like you ever got past that?
Yes and no. No, because um, I felt like it was disrespectful. Um, but and yes, because that's not something I'm holding on to. I'm not thinking about that at all.
So, so what do you mean when you say no? Does and I guess what I meant, does that something does her saying that back then still bother you?
You said that stuff like that she said back then still bother me.
Yeah. Does that, like that very thing, does that still bother you? And I want to say it's possible to forgive somebody without and still be hurt by something. So I was just wondering what you meant by the no.
But the first thing I had said was that that like when I said no, I had said that because it was disrespectful for her to say that.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if it. I would say yeah. I would say yeah because I would I would kind of have the like kind of blow it off, not say nothing, like kind of shut down attitude about it. So I would say yeah, it can still affect me today.
Okay. Well, Sister Tanks, do you have anything to say to that, to what he's saying?
Yes. I remember exactly when I said it. Um, and I feel ashamed that I said something like that to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said I remember I said that out of anger in Louisiana.
I want to say something to you both. I want to ask this question. How old were you all when y'all got together?
18 and 19.
So y'all were young. And first of all, I want to say I appreciate you both for coming on and talking tonight. I know it's not the easiest thing to talk about, things that you've dealt with in your past and things that might still be affecting you today. But the reason why I wanted to talk with you both about these things, because if you might notice that how it's taken you a little while to answer my questions because um, that hurt from that stuff is still there. And these are the types of things that destroy marriages is the unspoken stuff. The something so How many years have y'all been together now?
Nine.
So for 9 years. So things that have happened almost a decade ago that's really going unspoken, uh, still affecting you both, and you're kind of just walking around each other, and just kind of living with each other and kind of just dealing with it. But is to me, it's obvious that the stuff is still there. And again, I know it's not an easy thing. These aren't easy things to talk about, but these things between you two need to be talked about, uh, um, to be able to move forward in your marriage. You can't walk around pretending that that stuff isn't still there. The lack of trust, the the disrespect, and even if right now you don't feel the way you felt back then, just the fact that it's still not being talked about and haven't been these things haven't been reconciled, it's enough to still poison your marriage and to cause division there. So it's important, and I know especially two people can get used to not talking to each other about stuff, about roots, the heart of their issues, and they just learn to coexist. But at the same time, it's still it could still be a poison uh, to the marriage. I asked you about how old you all were when you got together because I think it's important to keep that in mind. It's very rare for marriages to work out today, in today's age, with people getting married at getting together at 18 and 19. You have to give each other a silly curve. In other words, when we were 18 and 19, we didn't know much of nothing. Didn't have the wisdom that we have today. We know how to be a little bit more wise today than what we were a decade ago, and you have to keep that in mind uh, today. That what you did 10 years ago, that was a different person. If that make any sense, that was a young person. If that make any sense, a person that was just getting out into the world and just getting their feet wet and just really didn't know themselves. And so you couple that with trying to get to know somebody else when you don't know your own self, it could be a recipe for disaster. And so you have to keep those things in mind whenever you are, reconciling things. You give each other grace for the young, the immaturity that was there. Because my wife and I, we got married about 11 years ago, and neither one of us are the same person. And that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind. And we were in our 30s, mid 30s when we got married. But that's what happens. You grow, and no matter how old you get in your marriage and in your own age, you continue to grow, and you have to forget the stupid yesterday. You have to forget how silly you were uh, last year. You see, and that's what, to me, that's what part of marriage is about, is growing together and forgiving each other for yesterday, and the lack of forgiving each other for the lack of wisdom yesterday, or however many years ago. To me, that's what marriage is about. And but what the devil is a master at is getting people to to stick with uh, what they saw years ago, to keep that embedded in their mind and in their hearts, so that even though we're both wiser in this decade, we still are holding on to the foolishness we did in the last decade, and that's a detriment to marriage.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it kind of in stages, how we talk about even in our walk with the Lord, how we grow from faith to faith, and glory to glory. And we've talked about it even on a natural sense with school, how we go from grade to grade, in different levels, and just naturally, so we can look back at things that we've done, like maybe in elementary school or middle school, and we laugh at ourselves, because we were so silly, we just did silly things. And that's the way I look at marriage, that there are levels or cycles that you go through, or phases that you go through, seasons, if you will, kind of like what we even talked about in daily devotion. There are different seasons. And just like you said, at 18, even 5 years later, you're not the same person. You're growing. And I think the most important thing is to always, have a mind to give your spouse room to grow, and to renew those mercies every day. I think that's really, really important. When we look at ourselves, we know that um, we need mercy, and that's one of the things that helps us to extend mercies, to other people, and including our spouse especially, because of course we know the enemy hit the hardest with the people that we're closest to. And I think it's important, to be able to look back and know what you're still hurt from. I think about, we were having a discussion in fellowship, that kind of spilled over to my husband and I having a more personal discussion. This was a few months back. And it was funny because it was like I revisited the very first relationship that I had been in, and didn't realize that I was still carrying hurt, because I had just kind of swept it under the rug, and in my mind moved on, but it was like I needed to go back and acknowledge that, and deal with the gravity of how it affected me, so that I could be able to move on from it. And I think, as we're talking tonight, and however often we may talk about it, I think that's the most important thing, to recognize, this happened and I was hurt by it and I'm still affected, but I'm ready and willing to let it go so that we can move on, beyond it.
And I think that's a very important thing uh, to think about. Um, First thing is acknowledging the hurt, and especially to acknowledge, because one of the things I think that can frustrate an individual is when they feel like their spouse don't understand to what degree they were hurt. And so then, because the spouse don't understand to what degree that hurt, uh, whatever caused it, hurt them, then the spouse is just moving on with life. But the one that was hurt by whatever um, is still stuck wherever they were hurt at. And then you get this play going back and forth where spouses will start acting out, towards one another. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk with you all about. So I understand that even today, in this time, you all have problems that you all can name that you have. But I want to share with you that all of these things the bad fruit that you're seeing today is a result of what took place years ago that was never reconciled. And what happens is there's an original hurt, and then after that there's a play on the original hurt, where everything else is just a fruit of the original hurt. And so Sister Tanks, in your case, you basically you were saying you felt betrayed by your husband, but uh, concerning the things that were said with that was spoken about you with his brother and sister-in-law, and so you also said that made you feel like you couldn't trust him. And so now, I want to share this with you. When a person is in that place, especially a woman, when a woman is in that place, no matter how many children she have for that same man, she'll go about establishing her own life, and she'll go about, it'll be two different families in the home. Until trust is established, it'll be two different families in the home. It'll be you and the children against the daddy, you know. Uh, But and you what happens is you'll be building yourself a your own safety place to keep from feeling the way that you felt back then, to keep from being betrayed. Now the problem with that is that place that you build to feel safe in, it also keeps you from feeling the love that your husband may have for you, and you'll always question his love for you because of a place that you built around yourself. You understand? The only way you can be with somebody for almost 10 years and still not trust them is if you've built your own life inside of your marriage. Because, trust is something that should be there just by default after living with each other for so long. It should come back at some point, if that make any sense. So, so what you're saying is that you've never been able to bounce back from that.
No, sir.
Okay, so I want to ask you this: Do are you you heard what your husband said
Mm-hmm.
about you heard what your husband said about why he did that?
Yes, sir.
It might not have been the wisest choice, but in his mind, at that age, uh, he felt like he needed somebody to talk to about what was going on. And you heard him say his brother was older than him, had more experience than him. And so in his mind, I'm getting wisdom. It wasn't to belittle you, if that makes sense. Now, and I want to ask you this: Do you receive that?
Yes, sir.
And again, I say, we have to keep in mind that you all were young. You're still young as far as I'm concerned, but you all were young and immature. And that's what we do. When we're young and immature, we make mistakes. And we do things today that we wouldn't dare do 10 years from now. Just through experience and knowing better. So, so had you ever thought along those lines, like what your husband said, that it wasn't to belittle you, it was to, I guess, to seek advice.
Mm, no, sir.
So I wanted to ask you, did you feel any kind of way when you heard him saying that earlier?
I was, yeah, because I never thought that's what his intentions were during that time. But I can see the way that he is now, like, because I know that he comes to you for wisdom and advice about a lot of stuff. And him saying that, like, I can see that's the reason why he reached out and was talking to his brother the way that he was.
Hmm. All right. Um, so I want to just share this as well with what your husband said about when you all were in Louisiana. So, Brother Tanks, do you feel like that was the most hurtful thing? Was the being called a bum and her withholding herself in your
Yeah.
marriage? That was the most hurtful thing. And so, Sister Tanks, you said that you had did that out of anger.
Yes, sir. The comment.
Okay. Um,
Mm,
did you have anything else to say about that?
sir, about holding my arm, having a mindset of you're only supposed to be intimate once. week because if you do it more than then he's gonna get tired. Like that's what I literally thought at that age. And I remember sharing something.
All right, so you're hold on just a second. You're breaking up. Is it are y'all on the same internet?
No, sir, we're not. I'm not on the internet with her.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So could you say that again, Sister Tanks?
I was saying back then, my mindset was like you can't have sex. Like if you have sex more than once a week, then you're having sex too much, and he's gonna get tired of it. That's what I thought, and I remember saying that to someone.
So that was part of your thinking. If you have sex more than a week, then you're gonna get tired.
Like
He
it
gonna
was,
get tired. That's what you were taught
yes, sir.
by who?
I rem No, I remember thinking that way. I don't think anybody taught me that, but I remember that being my thought process back then.
All right, but Tank, what do you have to say about that?
I believe she told me that before. I don't remember what my response was to it when she told me that, but um, I feel like that doesn't account for the entire time
Mm.
because there's times when I feel like that it was purposely done.
As a way of what?
I guess like trying to I know the word I'm trying to say. I can't think of the word though. I guess like trying to control me or trying to train me or just anything like that or trying to punish me. That's the word I'm looking for.
All right, so Sister Tanks, can you understand what he's saying?
Yes, sir.
So do you feel like you were trying to punish him or trying to control him with that in some instances?
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to ask why.
I think, well, in the beginning, I know if we would get into an argument, I wouldn't want to be intimate.
Mhm.
Um, I've done that a few times in the beginning.
I want to ask you this, Sister Tanks. At what point do you think you in your marriage you started holding something in your heart towards your husband? Because if this was going on in Louisiana, then it had to be something in Louisiana as well.
Um, I probably when we moved to our second apartment because that's when I was working and we had lost our son during that time. Um, yeah, that's what I remember.
All right, so you all lost a little boy. Um, so do you? So what made you take that out on him? As far as, or do you think you were holding that against your husband, the loss of your son?
I remember thinking to myself, well, if I didn't have to work so much, then probably would have not have lost them. I probably would have had more time to take care of myself, like carrying them.
Hmm. Were you about to say something else?
Um, so that was something that I was thinking naturally during that time. But I remember also telling you all about the spiritual side of it, of what happened, but right before then.
Yeah. So, um, do you think that you let go of that?
I'm not sure. I don't.
Say it again now.
I don't think I'm holding on to it, but it hurts when I think about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I guess just thinking about the difference in the time frame and the fact that you're dealing with old today. One of the things that came to my mind was that message that was preached that everything God does is good, and I know a lot of times when we get hurt, in whatever capacity that might be. Um, we're gonna target that towards somebody. It's gonna be somebody's fault. And in this situation, like you said, you shared some other things with us that involved you, and then of course you have this other dynamic where you felt like your husband could have done something differently. Um, but I think one of the things that I just wanted to share, concerning that is that um, even that far back in your life, if I think if you will take that message, and apply it, and just trust the Lord that's what was gonna happen at that time. Even if you had taken off work, that's what was gonna happen because everything that God does is good and that He's in control. And sometimes we want to know the reason why, and but we don't always know the reason why. And that's where our trust in the Lord comes. And so I just as a means of you being able to heal, number one, and move past that, and um not allow that to be a wedge between you and your husband where that's something that you're holding in your heart against him, um, because that's one of those possibles. It's not even concrete that if the working situation had been different, that the pregnancy was going to turn out differently. And so I just really want to encourage you in that, and really both of you, because I don't want to take away from the fact that both of you lost a child. It wasn't just you. Both of you did, and that was a hurt that both of you have to get past and get over. And the best way to do that, kind of like what my husband said in the beginning, is that you reconcile things according to the word of God. And so you go back to everything that God does is good. And if He let it happen that way, then we trust that it was good according to His will, even though it may not feel good to our flesh, and we may have to be healed from the hurt from it. As with a lot of things as we go through life, because we're not going to go through life not being untouched, but to put that in God's hands. And when the enemy tries to bring blame, you put that trust in the Lord that this was okay. This is just the way the Lord allowed it to play out. So I'll just be okay with how the Lord allowed that, because just given what you shared with us, in terms of that spiritual side of it, your husband could be, if the devil is very subtle, and he could have that playing in your husband's mind that, okay, well, this is your fault, and then playing in your mind, well, this is his fault, and then you're always pinned against each other. But if the two of you will come together and make a decision that, what, um, God allowed it, and I'm just going to be okay with it, and allow the Lord to heal you from there, and not allow the enemy to keep pinning you against each other in that, with that situation.
And so I have a question to ask you, you both. Have y'all ever sat down and just actually had a open, honest conversation about the passing of your son?
No, sir.
So you see how that's really a conversation that need to happen. That in and of itself, just if nothing else had happened in your marriage, that would have been enough to break you. If nothing else would have happened, that would have been enough to cause division. And so it's something that need to be talked about between you two. With just you two. That's I believe that's the first thing that y'all need to reconcile, because everything else is stuck on top of that. I sincerely believe that's the first thing that y'all need to talk about, because that's not something to just live past. You have to those That's something that you really sincerely have to talk about, share your feelings about it, and what your thoughts, uh, without, of course, without blame and things like that, because I believe y'all are past that point. But again, the devil is really slick. Even if you could say, well, I don't believe it's your fault, or I don't believe it's his fault or her fault, uh, because it hasn't been talked about, it's still something that the devil can play on. It's still a card that the devil can play. That's why it's very, very important that you talk about that you reconcile that. And I understand it could be a very hurtful thing, um, because that's not the easiest thing to get over. And but if you all are married, this is something that needs to be brought to the surface between you two and talked about. You know, because to me, what I see is both of you are hurting in different parts of the house. If that makes any sense. And it's like a couple laying down in the same bed with their backs turned to one another, and both of them crying. And the healing that the Lord gives us as married couples is we turn towards one another and hug each other to help heal each other. The Lord gave you each other to heal, to help each other to heal from things that you go through. And so I can't imagine, how many years ago was that now? How many years ago has that been?
9, 9 years.
9 years. So I can't imagine just walking around for 9 years and just coping with something like that by myself, especially if I'm married. And so that's not God's will. And I'm telling you, I sincerely believe that you all need to sit down together as husband and wife and talk about your true feelings about that situation. And because listen, and I believe where you all are now, it would be awkward because you spent so much time not talking about it, and both of you could feel like that you're hurting by yourself, and the other person just moved on when you're really both in the same place with that. But I believe it's time to push past that awkwardness, if that make any sense. Like y'all are married. Y'all ought to be able to sit down and talk about it and get and try to work past that awkwardness. Um, this isn't going to be our last counseling session with you all, uh, but we want to kind of move things in steps so that we can uh, gradually grow. You all can gradually grow in the things that the Lord wants you to grow in. But I think that's the first step, is both of you actually sitting down and talking about how you feel and the hurt you may have felt, because that's not a it's not easy thing to go through at all. But it's even harder to go through when you feel like when you're married, but you feel like you're going through it by yourself, and the other person don't understand your pain and all of the things that go along with that. And so that would be what I would suggest that you all do. Um, and I just want to use this as an example. So I imagine you both are in the same house now. Y'all in the same house.
Yes, sir.
So where am I going? Where am I going?
Mm-mm. Get the phone.
Y'all sitting close to each other, but not in the same picture. And and so you think about this. So both of y'all are using your own phones, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you're both using your own phones, using more power than what you need to use, and things like that. And I'm saying that to make a point. That's what happens when husband and wife aren't together. They're draining each other, and that one thing, that what you know your son passing away, you spend your whole marriage draining each other because of that, because it's something that's not talked about. That's something y'all need to talk about together and get out in the open and not be ashamed to cry in front of each other if it comes down to that. That I believe that in and of itself will help break some bondage that the enemy have set around, have set between you two. And so, what do y'all think about that?
That's a good start. Yeah.
So, what do you think about that, brother Terrence?
I think that that's something that we can do.
One of the things I also want to share, and this is the reason why I say the devil's stacked on top of that. Um, so you got this thing where both of you all were working in the same place around that time, and some of the people that were on that job were speaking against your marriage, like basically
Mm-hmm.
sowing bad seed into your marriage, and then you get pregnant, you lose your son, and I think Brother Tex was sharing to me that they had took up some money to help with the cost of burying your son and all of that. And so you
Yes.
see how
Mhm.
I'm trying to show you how the enemy was stacking stuff. It wasn't just the loss of your son, but the stuff that happened around it. So by the time you all lost your son and buried him, you didn't come back together because the devil had already sowed discord between you two. You understand what I mean? And so I believe if you go back to ground zero with that, you talk about and discuss how you felt about it, um, and undo some of those things that were sold into your marriage, if that make any sense. Because I'm telling you, sometimes if we're not careful as husband and wife, we can get used to living. Before anybody ever get divorced, they practice it. They get used to living two separate lives, and of course we know that's not God's will, and that's not God's will. You ought not to do that. But it's but if you practice not talking about hurtful things, if you practice um, not sharing your concerns, and I'm talking about the hurtful things. We'll get to some of the other stuff at a later date, but I'm telling you, if we could talk about all the other stuff tonight, it won't make a difference
Yeah.
if you don't get back to that root. It won't, because all you'll see is all this stuff will keep coming up. The fruit of what you see, you got to cut the tree at the root. You can pick fruit from it all day long, and next season you'll see some more fruit there, which is what's been going on in your marriage. But if you don't get to the root of that, then you'll just keep seeing the fruit. And so we can deal with the other stuff, and we've dealt with some of that stuff before, but we can deal with the other stuff. But let's start at the root of the tree: the loss of your son, the feelings that went around that, and listen, also asking each other for forgiveness for the things that were said, and forgiving each other for the immaturity that may have been there at the beginning, uh, because you're a whole decade down the road. It's clear to me today you're not the same person that you were back then. Y'all have been a part of this ministry for almost for 6 years, going on 7 years now. Neither one of you are the same as what you were when you first got here. So you have to give each other that grace to grow, if that makes any sense, and allow each other that. You see? And now here's the trick of the devil. He'll make it look brand new when you haven't dealt with the root of it. It'll look like, well, this is the same stuff over and over again. That's the way it'll look, when you haven't dealt with the root of what the true issue is. You see? And so, listen, when you're young like that, y'all were around 20 years old when you lost your son. That is a lot. That is something very, very heavy to deal with. And if that bond of marriage isn't there the way it's supposed to be when something like that happens, it'll set you on the wrong course for a long time. And that's what I believe happened. That bond wasn't there the way it was supposed to be there when that happened, and so naturally, it caused a greater division. You see, and so I really believe, I'm telling you, if you'll sit down and talk about it, and share how you felt about it, and release each other from that, and accept what happened to your son as God's will, ultimately, then I believe that's step one of the healing process for your marriage. I believe that's step one.
I didn't really have much to add to it, but I think you said something really powerful in saying, them releasing each other from whatever happened back then. I think that's really, really important, in this process as they're revisiting that hurt and wanting to move forward. Just being able to release each other.
So if it's okay with y'all, can we have a few more counseling sessions with you all after tonight?
Yes, sir.
And would you all mind sharing how things went when after you have the talk about what we're saying you all need to talk about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Um, did you all have anything to say?
I don't think so.
What about you, Brother Tanks?
Um, I thought I keep thinking about when you said how the devil will keep bringing stuff to your mind, but he'll make it seem like it's brand new, but it's still the same things over and over and over again. I feel like that was very helpful to to hear that and to recognize that because you can clearly see that that's what's been going on. Um, and also, I see that I can see the wisdom of the Lord in doing this in steps, like going back over the things that happened and not just showing one person's side of what they think happened, but showing both parties' side of it.
Mhm.
Because I can share something with you, but that's just my side. But then my wife can share something, and then that's her side. But then I see how the Lord has to be in the middle to reveal what's actually going on. Because you already know what I had in my mind when I had told you yesterday about today. But I see how that would have been foolish of me to make that decision without really going back over everything.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'm glad that you all have shared, what you shared today, and I believe that this will help other people as well. I sincerely believe that. Uh, and then you have to feel and you all have been a part of the ministry for a long time, and this is one of the things that you have to know about God. Nothing is an accident. The Lord and His sovereignty, He'll keep things in our lives that's not comfortable for us, just for the purpose of using it to display His power later. If that makes any sense. Uh, the Lord came across a blind man, and his disciples asked him, "What did he do, or what did his parents do for him to be born blind?" And the Lord said, "Nothing, but so that the glory of God could be revealed, the power of God could be shown through this man." And that's the way you have to think about it. So all these years y'all have been going through things. This is by God's design. Y'all understand? It's not. This isn't just happenstance. When you belong to the Lord, and I believe you both do, everything that God allows us to go through is for His purpose. Even when it's not comfortable to us, it's still by His design. You see, and so that's one of the things you have to keep in mind as we continue to talk. That's one reason why it's important to forgive one another and to release each other, especially if God is the one is if God Himself is responsible for the thorn. You understand? And so uh, that's something that my prayer is that you will have that talk, and that you will uh, release each other. And because what happens, you could spend your whole life living on your side of the bed, and without knowing what's going on the other side of it, without, my perspective is my perspective, and my wife's perspective is hers, and we can be enemies in that regard, or we could come together and talk about, and I see her point, and then she see my point, and we learn to live together, and have a better understanding of each other. And so, again, I really appreciate you all coming on and being honest. That there was a reason why I wanted to do it this way, uh, because I felt like if we talk to you all this way, it would help you all to talk to each other in private as well. Because to me, that's where the real work is going to take place, if that makes any sense. In private, between you two, that's where the miracle is going to take place. And so, again, for I want to say thank you all for um, being open about how you felt, and and my prayer. I look forward to see where it go from here. So, are you all going to talk tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And I would hope, and when you talk tonight, that you will record it, the audio of it, or however even if you want to record the video. I would suggest that you record it, and don't be shy with each other, you know. And when you're talking, don't sit across on different sides of the room, or in different rooms to do it. Talk to each other sitting on side of each other or facing each other, you know, uh, because the Lord intend for us to enjoy our marriage and to help each other. That to me, marriage is not only about experiencing good times, but it's also there to help each other through the bad times. And so, and when you've had a bad time 9 years ago that you haven't got past, then you've been living in that bad time for the last 9 years. You see. And so, my prayers is that the Lord will help you all as you talk tonight, and also as we continue to comb through some things that you all have experienced in your marriage. All right. All right. So you all didn't have anything else to share?
I don't. No, sir.
All right.